Oh no, I double muted myself. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. Thanks for joining us today, and hello wherever you're seeing me from, even a bus like Christopher here. Welcome to 60 minutes of unscripted .NET edutainment, where our goal is to empower the .NET community to achieve more. I am one of your hosts, Luis, and with me are my other hosts here, co-hosts Cam and Myra. And with us today is Scott, who is going to be talking to us about this really interesting project. Usually we talk about, things like, building ORMs or building web apps and things like that. But Scott's going to talk to us about something a little bit different, which is building his own version control using fsharp. But before we get started, Scott, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Scott. I'm talking to you from near Seattle in Issaquah, Washington. I'm a technical architect with GitHub, formerly with Microsoft before I came over. And I got the functional code bug a few years ago, and then had some evil thoughts about version control, and here we are. So
that's how
I think we've all.
To be here.
I was going to say, I think we've all had evil thoughts about version control.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Scott. But before we get started and show us Grace here, let's go into the related bits segment.
All right. So the related bits this week, which there we have a URL right there, are pointing to actually some Azure DevOps documentation that starts with this "What is version control" article. This is a really short article. It says 2 minutes to read. I think a lot of folks will probably even get through it faster than that. It's just why version control matters, the benefits of version control, and next steps. But the next steps are what I want to call out here, because it takes the reader on a on a journey of what is Git, how to install Git, how to set up a Git repository, saving and sharing code with Git. If you've got somebody new to your team that is not familiar with Git, this is a pretty good primer. Even though it's Azure DevOps, even if you're using like GitHub or whatever, the docs here do a pretty good walkthrough of like the theory of version control with Git. So we would recommend that for folks who need to get up to speed with version control with Git. And I think that's about all I have to say about that.
Awesome. Thanks, Cam. Let's jump into the hallway segment and hear from Scott.
Awesome.
All right. Yep. Go for it, Scott. The floor is yours.
Sure. You could pop up my screen. There we go. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here talking about this. I've been working on this for over 2 years, and this is the first time I'm kind of publicly talking about it. So it's my baby. It's early. It is an alpha. We're gonna look later at the repo. So in the idea of if you release a product when it's not an alpha, you're kind of doing it too late. So I'm welcoming you to my messy kitchen. But it's a fun project, and I'm really excited to share it. The first thing I want to say is I work for GitHub, and I am talking about source control. And I need to be very clear. We see this disclaimer on blog posts all the time about, hey, these are personal opinions and whatever. Like, I need to sort of say, like, it goes double here. I am not announcing anything official from GitHub. This is a private side project. I'm excited about source control. I probably wouldn't have gotten excited about source control had I not been at GitHub, but like, this is personal. This is solely a private project. I just want to make that very, very clear. Okay.
So by working on GitHub, you got some ideas for your own project here that you wanted to try it out.
I did. The quick genesis was that there was a source control summit in November of 2020 that was put on by Facebook at the time, and I was the product manager of Git systems for GitHub at the time, and so I got invited to that and had some conversations with people from lots of different companies, and my takeaway, I don't want to speak for anyone else, my takeaway from that was that we were all wondering what was coming next. Like we were all like, we're a little tired of what we had and we're wondering what was coming next. And that led me to a few weeks later starting to think about doing this and starting to think, well, you know what, if this is what I want, I better start building it. So here we are. So I'm going to talk about motivations. Why on earth would I build a source control system? Sounds nuts. I'm going to talk a little bit about the features of Grace. I'm going to do a quick demo. I'm going to show you some diagrams I have on my repo, and we're going to talk about architecture. And then really like the second half of this, we're going to look at code. I want to show you some stuff from the fsharp code that I've written. I want to show you some stuff in Sharp Lab and show you some of the translation between fsharp and C# and give you something, even if you never write fsharp, if you only write C#, I want to give you some ideas that you can take away right now. You can literally start using today to make your code easier and better and more testable. So motivations. The first thing, like, let's talk about the obvious thing. Like Git has won, right? Git won. Git is 94% roughly of the source control market right now. I mean, no disrespect to any of Git's honorable competitors, but like we all use Git by default now. It handles almost every source control scenario. It's really fast. I want to say the thing I love most about Git and the reason for me that I think it won is because the branching mechanics and the working directory are brilliant. The ephemeral working directory. It's great at what it does. However, it doesn't have the best UX. It's really hard to learn. It was designed by a kernel developer, and I don't usually like my user experience designed by kernel developers. It's a very different. Call me crazy.
That's a good rule for life.
Saying, and there's tons of academic and industry research about how confusing Git is. Git is a little bit of a hazing ritual that we put the entire industry through to learn, and we really need to stop blaming users for not understanding it. There's probably 15 or 20% of developers who really like have the light bulb go off and get very good with using Git and understand it and feel very confident and fluid with it. And the rest of us, and I include myself in this, like get scared. Like if something goes wrong in Git, we kind of get scared. And here's like a quote from this research. It's a wonderful paper here, a case of computational thinking. Like feel free to look it up. It's a really interesting read. But here's a quote from it. Even one of the more experienced Git users requested that someone else perform an operation because, quote, it scares the blank out of me. Like that's how it feels. And it's not just me saying this. And like I respect Git enormously, but like here's Mark Rasinovich. He's a pretty smart guy. Git is the bane of my development process. Like, so it's not about whether you're smart. It's not, it's not about that. Git is just a confusing thing. GitHub, when you go to download GitHub Desktop, it says focus on what matters instead of fighting with Git. Like, so we know it. This is interesting. When I was doing research for this, I was looking at Quora, just finding what questions people were asking. And there's some interesting questions here. Why is Git so hard to learn? What makes you hate Git? Is Git poorly designed? This question's funny because it means like they don't understand open source, but like, is Git meant to be so difficult to learn so the company can continue to make money by training people how to use it? It's just funny. But this one broke my heart. Really, like if I think Git is too hard to learn, does it mean I don't have the potential to be a developer? And I mean, if we're gatekeeping people that we need in our industry based on our source control system, we're doing something wrong. And it just broke my heart. So, and I want to say one other thing, like everything changes in our industry. Tech changes faster than any other industry for sure. We're driven by trends. Like some of the trend cycles that we're driven by are shorter, like web front end frameworks, right? Like about every, I think since the show started, we have a new web framework, probably new, front end. So like some of those trend cycles happen really quickly, and some of them take a really long time. Like relational databases were the leader for a couple of decades before NoSQL came, and before relational. Like I'm old enough to remember when relational was the new thing, and hierarchical databases were the thing on mainframes. So and trends change for good reasons. They're not random. There's one other thing I wanted to that I should have pulled up before we got on. That is a little spreadsheet I did to talk about trend analysis. And when you do trend analysis, you can look at it quantitatively or qualitatively. There's sort of like two ends of that you can look at. And this is a little quantitative analysis. This is not the right file, pardon me. No, don't save. I want to pull up the other file. It's live. We'll do it live.
It is.
You need to throw things at your producers when you say that.
It is live, exactly. So this is something called the Fisher-Pry model. It's a very simplified version of a Fisher-Pry model, but I just want to talk about why now is important to look at source control. And the idea of a Fisher-Pry model is to say, what's the market? There we go. What's the market share predictions that we can make? And I have this little thing. So let's imagine that whatever the next version control system that wins, whatever it is, whether it's Grace or it's some others, there's some really interesting other version control products, whatever one like catches the trend, like is seen as cool, starts to get some market share. At some point, it's going to be 1%. And the question is, when's it going to be 1%? And then what's the doubling rate? And with this assumption of like 1% about 3 years from now, and let's say it doubles every year. So if we start here, 2%, 4%, like that crosses. In other words, the new one is bigger than Git in around 2031. Now, if I'm off a little bit, like let's pretend I'm off a little bit and it's actually slower than that, it's 15 months doubling rate. Okay, well, it pushes it out about a year and a half. But roughly speaking, we're targeting like 2030, 2031 for something to be bigger than Git, but it has to start before that. And what that means is, and if 1% is going to happen here, that means that we have this 3-year period to build the thing, to create something that catches the trend. Now, another thing I want to say is like, I'm making up this sort of trend line. These are actual data. This data point and this data point are from Stack Overflow's developer survey. I'm extrapolating for a few years, but what I can tell you is that we're running out of room on Git. Like it has nowhere to go, and nothing in our industry lasts at 95%. Again, I'm old enough to remember when Windows was 95% of the market. It's not on client anymore, and it's obviously not on server. So, something will replace Git is kind of all I really want to point out about that.
I have a question real quick, Scott, though. So,
sure.
So when we talk about these trends, does it take into account that I think Git is unique among version control systems, in that it's the first one I remember having it like a huge DevOps infrastructure built around it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Both on GitHub and GitLab and all the various flavors of Git. I mean, it's beyond just a tool that people use now. It's infrastructure, right? I mean, it's part of the DevOps story on a lot of shops. Do you think that's going to have an impact on reluctance to take up the next hot thing?
Yeah, to be totally honest, yes. Like it's a problem. Git, I mean, like, yes, it's a problem, but on the other hand, we all adapt pretty quickly. Like when some new source control system is seen as being cool and is starting to get some market share, the tools will change. It's and what I'm hoping is that when you think about it, I've tried to write something that's easy to adopt, whether because I've written something that's cloud native, and so I hope that when you think about the difference between what a full DevOps stack provides and just the version control part of it, that it will be not horrible to make that transition, but I think ultimately users will decide. I might be tilting at windmills, to use the Don Quixote reference, But I do think that just from a trend analysis point of view, nothing lasts at 95%. And so I believe something will come. I believe it so much I'm spending an awful lot of my free time on it.
I mean, I remember way back when thinking that, Subversion is so great compared to like source safe. How could anything come along and be better than this, right?
Yeah.
So.
And like I said, I remember, like I said, I'm old enough to remember when relational databases were new. And I remember thinking like, these little toy databases, how could they handle any real data? And look at it now. So what I want to say anyway is that there will be source control after Git, I believe, and it won't be Git++. It won't be like just a tweak on Git. There are other projects that are exploring that space, and there are other projects for the last 15 years that have explored that space, about making like keeping Git but making a better front end. And I just don't think that's never won market share. I don't think it will. And I want to say adding features to Git won't prevent it. So, like that's not, you can add all the features to Windows you want. People are, a significant number of people use Macs. And whatever the new source control system, I think it'll be cloud native. And if it's going to get market share, it's going to have compelling new features that Git doesn't have or can't have. And I've tried to think that through and build some of it. So let's talk about some features.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what would solve like that, especially the steep learning curve that Git has.
There's also something along the features here, right? That I think as new sort of needs and workflows arise, right? Git provides a really good vehicle, or not even Git itself, but version control in general. For example, for machine learning, right? Like as your data changes, you want to keep track of the changes of your data and things like that. And today, Git doesn't handle that really well. Same thing with models and these other types of workflows that are not developer focused yet, but as more sort of engineering practices come into the space, right? It'll be important for folks to be able to have something to address those issues.
And I totally agree. And when I get to architecture, we'll be showing the file storage for this is backed by object storage in cloud native systems. So you could imagine Grace running on with blob storage in Azure Blob Storage or AWS S3. And so you have that unlimited file size. So I notice that my screen on StreamYard seems to be lagging a bit, and I'm sorry, I don't quite know why.
So of course, the nature of live streaming, not the first time we've had this type of issue. If you want to take a second to, before the stream, you mentioned, hey, maybe I should share my screen at 1080p. You might try that. I think you're a little bandwidth constrained.
Well, all right, I'm going to give that a shot. See, like it just caught up. All right. Give me one moment. I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to be back.
Sure, not a problem.
Stop screen. We'll do it live.
And Manami is saying that they're already cringing at the next version control system having tons of new features, making everything much more complex.
Oh, but it's going to be really nice. No, it's going to make it nicer and easier. Well, I mean, if you take mine.
So it's going to be great.
Everything that I'm trying to do is about kindness. It is an interesting thing to have Git in the name of GitHub. But again, I'm not here as a GitHub rep. I'm just a guy with a dream. I'm just another .NET developer today. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again.
I mean, with any luck, David, they're going to call it Grace Hub,
which is now at well, I won't dream that big. Okay, I am sharing my screen again.
All right, let's do it.
There we go. Okay, so here's how it started. I just was thinking, I was literally sitting on my porch right behind this camera and thinking, if I could have something like the OneDrive sync agent, which is really nice. They rewrote it a few years ago, and it's really rock solid. And if I could have something like a local agent that ran on developers' machines and that uploaded files every time you saved, the way that OneDrive does, and it had a live web connection with the server, and then I could make it cloud native, then like put those ingredients together and you have a new platform that you could build features on. And so what could I build? And well, come on, PowerPoint, do the thing. There we go. Well, I built Grace. And Grace is about kindness. Like, first and foremost, I want to say that, like, everything I talked about with the UX of Git, and again, I respect Git enormously. I respect the people that maintain Git. These are some of the best developers in the world. I'm lucky to know some of them. They're brilliant, and like really, really love and respect Git. And I'm trying to do something that's just nicer and kinder. So Grace has features that make being a developer easier every day. That's what I'm really trying to build. It feels lightweight and automatic when you use it. It reduces merge conflicts if used in the way that I'm expecting it to be used, and hopefully eliminates fear. And it's cloud native, so it can run on almost any cloud and any infrastructure. And I'm using Dapper for that. We're going to talk about that when I talk about architecture. So what's the overview of Grace? So there, like I said, there's a local agent called Grace Watch. Again, like, my screen seems to be lagging a little bit. Sorry about that. So there's a local agent called Grace Watch that just sits and runs and watches your directory. And every time you save a file, I can upload automatically. It can run arbitrary tasks, either on a schedule or reactively based on either what you do or what other people in your repo do, because everyone's using the repository. People who are live in the repository are constantly doing events, and you can sort of sync up with your friends in the repository all over the world. The server, Grace server, therefore has a real-time view of what everyone's doing. I've kept the part about switching branches. Like, switching branches is really fast in Git, and it's really fast in Grace as well. And lightweight, and there's a full client and server side model for automation based on the events. And really, I view Grace as a platform for building new features. Wow, I hope my screen catches up, because I have cool slides I'm trying to show here.
Why don't we try an alternative method, Scott? There's a
Sure.
on the present icon in StreamYard, there is a share slides feature like what we have in Teams.
Mm-hmm.
Does that let us? Oh no, does that let us? Yeah, you can upload PowerPoint to that.
Well, I'm going to give that a shot.
And thank you to our viewers for bearing with us. It's just the nature
Yes.
of live streaming and having guests every week. You know, you can't predict the internet and connectivity. And
do appreciate it. Now the next question is, where is this? Where is this file anyway? Where did I save this thing? OneDrive personal. Okay. And I'm going to minimize that. And so OneDrive personal documents. Am I nuts? I'm nuts. Grace, OneDrive personal documents. Grace. Right? Sorry, bear with me. Tap dance a little bit.
Well, and while we're waiting, we'll put it out to the mailman's here.
Where is this file? That's hilarious. That, like, it ought to be here.
Sorry about that.
All right, I'm just going to go back to PowerPoint because this is just not happening for me.
Yeah, it's fine. We'll muddle through it best we can.
Yeah, sorry everybody.
If you want to try stopping your screen share and trying again, that's an option too.
Great. Let's see. So much for my big public reveal. It's going great so far. That's hilarious. Okay. Well, that's some code, but I wanted to show you that later. What am I supposed to do here? Thanks, StreamYard. I'm blaming StreamYard. I don't know. There we go.
Hey, there it is.
It's a little slow, but we're going to get there. So I want to say I'm building all the interfaces. Like, obviously, you need a command line interface, but I'm a big believer in native UI, native apps. I'm not a big Electron fan for many reasons. I certainly will need a web UI for it, of course, but I really am committed to building native apps to use Grace. And so, whether you're on Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, and even Linux, I hope, I'm thinking about using Avalonia for it. I want to test out. It's either going to be Avalonia or .NET MAUI, but I do want to create apps that have that stick to your finger speed that we always get with native apps. I'm a big fan of that. And you can roll your own with a server REST API. One way to think about Grace is really a modern 2023 style web application with a web server, with an API, a web API. So what is the workflow of Grace? So as I mentioned, there is Grace Watch, which is every time you save a file, I'm going to upload it. I'm going to do a little demo of that in a moment. There's also checkpointing, and checkpoint is this idea, in Git, when you say git commit, it means several different things. Git commit means I'm partially done. It means I'm done, and I'm ready for a pull request. And we even talk about merges as commits, which they're not exactly, but and what I wanted to do was disaggregate those uses and make it very clear what we're doing. And so I created this concept of a checkpoint, which is for you personally to say, I've completed this bit and I'm ready to keep going to the next bit, but I haven't done a commit yet. And then there's the idea of a commit. Of course, there's a commit, and you commit in your branch. And then the question is, how do you merge? And what's different about Grace, the one conceptual difference, I think, in Grace that's important to think about is this idea of promotions. So I don't call them merges, I call them promotions. There's this thing where if you imagine you have a branch off of main and you're ready, you have some changes and you want those pushed to main, you promote them. And what I'm trying to do is change the concept of source control from thinking of it as I'm pushing a diff from my branch to some other branch where I'm just inserting whatever lines of code changed. That's, I think, how we think of it in Git. And what I'm trying to sort of like point your eyes toward is think of it not like that, but think of it as main is a full particular version of the repo. And my branch is a different full version of the repo. And what I'm actually going to do is take my version of the repo with all the files, and main, the new pointer for main, is going to be pointing to this version that I just created. And in order to do that, that means that you have to be rebased on exactly the latest version from main. And while that sounds onerous, in practice, it actually works really well. When we do rebase in Git, 95+% of the time, we don't even notice it. It just works. And by doing that, we sort of shift left on merge conflicts. We eliminate a lot of merge conflicts by rebasing right away. And one of the features that Grace has is auto rebasing. So because it knows all the events that are happening in the repo, I can automatically on your client rebase. As soon as there's a promotion to your parent branch, I can automatically rebase you on that one. And if there's no conflicts, you won't even notice it. It happens in seconds and you just keep going. And if there is a conflict, I can let you know right away while you're in flow, so you can deal with it right away. And if you want to do stuff like, okay, I'll take the auto rebase, but I automatically want to do something like run a suite of unit tests. I want to like do that auto rebase and automatically run some unit tests. Cool. Like we'll be able to create that sort of automation to give you confidence in it.
What kicks off that auto rebase? Does that happen like real time, or is there like some button that you push to do it?
So for the auto part, Grace Watch is going to have that two-way connection with the server. And so when some other user, let's say in the repo, does a promotion to main, or like a PR gets approved, main gets updated to some new version. As soon as that happens, within seconds, I'm going to send a notification to Grace Watch, and Grace Watch will then pull a rebase down to your machine.
So would that create a scenario where, as a developer, like you said, you're in flow? Are you getting like dinged all the time with, oh, this, your buddy just committed something that totally conflicts with 1,800 files? Have fun. I mean, is that a scenario that's going to happen?
It's an interesting question. So first of all, I hope not. I mean, obviously, we would have to tune the kinds of notifications so that they're not too distracting, number one. Number two, when one of the things that I think this model of auto rebasing will expose is files that get updated by many developers over and over. So like imagine a large file that maybe is handling too many concerns. And every time somebody updates your repo, they have to do something in that file. It turns out studies have shown that like files like that are too big, that have too many concerns in them, and that lots of people update consistently, are exactly where bugs happen. And so Grace auto rebasing will kind of expose those files pretty quickly. And there might be that 1 or 2 or 3 files in your repo that you end up refactoring to work well with Grace. But other than that, like it's pretty effortless. If most people are working in different files all the time, it's going to go pretty quickly. I am like 2 slides behind on what StreamYard is showing, and I don't know what to do about it.
So I noticed in your system tray a second ago, Scott,
Yes.
I noticed in your system tray,
Yes.
the task manager icon was showing that your CPU was burning like at 90%. So there must be something in the background that's...
Well, it's actually okay. So here's a funny story. I'm on a fairly old machine. This is actually a four-year-old laptop. I'm on a Surface laptop too, and I need to update soon. But developing Grace on it has been really good, because if the performance is good on this, I know it'll be good going forward. Doing video with it kind of slows it down. I have like one of those platforms that has a fan underneath it, so it's cool enough, but it is, anyway, I don't know if it's me or not. I'm going to do one more. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to try it one more time.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Try it one more time.
Yeah, but I had to stop working on my Surface Book 2 as like my regular machine. I'm so much happier with desktop now.
I'm gonna be upgrading soon. So I know. So I wonder if that. Let's see. Okay, so that was the developer workflow slide, which I was talking about, and it's still not showing up. Anyway, let's talk about wait every save. Wait every save. I mean, you're gonna upload every save, and yes, but the point is we don't keep them for very long. Saves are ephemeral. So as we're collecting saves, I don't know how many we keep. We keep 7 days worth. We keep the last 1,000 of them. I'm not sure. We'll sort of figure out what makes the most sense. But saves are ephemeral, so they're for your benefit. They're for you to see, to be able to refer to the changes that you've made, and then they just go away. Checkpoints stay longer, but again, checkpoints can be ephemeral. Maybe we keep checkpoints for 3 months, 6 months, a year, but I don't need to know what your checkpoint was 3 years ago. But commits and promotions, obviously, you want to keep forever. And the question I have is, what features can we build on top of having this data? Now, one thing we can build is a time machine-like view of your code, where, and this is something I want to build in the native app, where you pull up this view that shows all the diffs for all the changes that you've made. And you can imagine that really helping you remember where you were after an interruption. So whether that interruption is you have a meeting, or your child comes home from school, or you just went to lunch, or whatever it is, you get back and you could very quickly go, okay, what was I thinking? Well, let me go back a few changes. Okay, I did that. That didn't work. That's right. That's what I was working on. And now you're kind of back in flow, instead of that 10 or 15 minute delay usually for us to reload state in our heads. At least, for me, certainly it's a common stat, right? The other thing, now that we're in the era of GPT-3 and AI going forward is, what if you could have AI look at all the saves that you've made in the last hour or the last whatever, the last 10 saves, and summarize it for you and help you reload state after an interruption. So like we've never had that raw data before, and with Grace you can have this. And the other thing you can really get that's sort of interesting is, because the server has a view of what everyone's doing, you can get notifications in real time that someone else is working in the same file you are. And again, trying to eliminate the pain of conflicts. If you could see it up front, you could just say, hey, oh, I see Chris is working in that same file. Let me check, actually. And you'll be able to switch very instantly to the branch that Chris is working on and look at it. Or you could just pull it up in a view and you can say, oh, okay, he's working in a totally other part of the file. I don't care. Or we're going to overlap and I better talk to him right away. So that's the kind of thing we can do. And there's all kinds of other features I want to build for version 1. Some of this is built, some of it is not. But the idea of having that live communication between server and client, instead of forks. So when you fork in Git, you have the entire repo. In Grace, because Grace is centralized. Oh, I haven't talked about centralized yet. We're going to talk about that. You can create personal branches. Instead of forking the whole repo, you just create a branch that you personally own on a repo that's already there. And when you're ready to sort of, like in an open source way, when you're ready to send a PR, well, your branch is there, and you can make your branch private or public, up to you. We can handle massive repositories. I've already tested Grace on repositories with 100,000 files and 15,000 directories, and the performance is really good. I've tested it with 10 gig files. Whether a 10 gig file should be in version control is another discussion, but
and I presume that there's no you have to install large file support kind of thing, right?
No.
Cool.
No, it's just built in because we sit on object storage. I want to build ACLs down to the file level so we can actually really scope down. And this is enterprise type features. Obviously we have to have good logging, all the enterprise features that we'll need. ACLs, I think, are super important, where you can scope this. I'm going to use the example of Active Directory, but this Active Directory group gets access to the files down here, but not over here. So I want to build that in with OAuth, of course. You can delete versions. There are times when you check in a secret by accident. Well, in Git, deleting a whole version and updating history is a real, it's not fun. I've built it in from the start. Optional file locking. So there are Perforce users, like gaming studios, where you need to lock files. If you're doing a large binary asset, for instance, you're making a racing game, and I'm editing the graphical view of the track. Well, there's no merging for that. If two people are working on that file, we're going to clobber each other. So I need to be able to lock a file that I'm working on. And I want to build optional file locking into it. So there's that kind of stuff. I'm just going to stop sharing because there's no point. I'm just going to talk because we're not getting anywhere. Or maybe I can just sort of share I can share every time I change slides.
Yeah, that might work
hilarious,
better.
Right? It might be better. And I want to say, in terms of performance, Grace, I'm maximizing perceived performance. And what I mean by perceived performance is Grace should feel fast. Now, Git is local. A lot of the things you do in Git and local. So Git is really fast. And because everything in Grace involves a network call, I can't, in many situations, I can't be as fast as Git, but I can be really close. And in lots of other situations, I can actually be as fast or faster because of using Grace Watch and having stuff pre-computed. So in web development, we think about this all the time, about what do I need to do immediately and what can I defer and what do I load now versus later. And so Grace has that kind of concept built in. And I borrow lots of things from Git. I just want to say, I borrow how switching branches is really fast and lightweight. I borrow the ephemeral working directory, and I have a .grace objects directory, just like there's a .git objects directory. And I'm using SHA-256 like modern Git does for tracking files. So There's so many things I'm borrowing from Git. Again, I like respect Git enormously, and there's no way to build a version control system today without. I'm going to stop sharing. There's no way to build a source control system today without building something that talks to Git or that relates to Git or makes you think about Git. So that's kind of that's the overall view of the features. We're running late because of all that. I do want to talk about architecture. I'm not sure how I'm going to do a demo because my screen doesn't update.
Let's try it. Yeah. Share your screen again. Yeah.
All right. We're going to do it. I wonder what would happen if I just share a window. I'm just going to share this window and see what happens. So let's talk about this. We're talking about architecture now. Grace is centralized, and I know what you're thinking. I used to use centralized, and that was really slow and horrible. And it's not. Like, Grace is not that. Grace is fast, and it's designed to feel lightweight, and it's designed to feel very easy to use and fluid. And like, if you still want decentralized version control, like, Git's going to still be there for a really long time. But my argument is that the complexity of Git and its brilliance, certainly, like, are rooted in the fact that it's decentralized. And the truth is, we really don't need a decentralized version control system. Like, I don't need the entire history of the repository on my local machine to do my job, any more than, like, if I'm doing a banking transaction. Like, I don't need to have the entire history of every banking transaction I've ever done on my PC before I do a new transaction. Like, I don't. Like, there's no other place in our lives where we say, I have to have the whole history of the thing before I can do the next thing. And
so what you're saying is that you're not relying on giant blockchains.
No, there will be no blockchain. Not if I have something to say about it. There's actually I have a frequently asked questions part of my on my repo in GitHub, and one of the joke questions I have in there is like, have you thought about using blockchain? And I just like have a face palm icon. Like, no. No. So Grace is cloud native. And again, not updating. Grace uses Dapper, and I want to pull up the chart for Dapper, and I'm going to again like reshare my screen real quick to get this caught up. So, for those who've seen Dapper, like, yay! If you haven't seen Dapper, Dapper is this amazing distributed application runtime where Dapper is this thing in the middle that you write your code to use the Dapper API, and then at runtime, you plug in the services that you want Dapper to actually use. So in this case, you can write in any language. I'm writing in .NET, of course, and there's both HTTP and gRPC to it. And then you have like all the services like state management for databases and PubSub and observability. So you have Zipkin or Jaeger or Azure Monitor. And of course, and it has a full virtual actors thing. Grace uses actors extensively for speed and for scalability. And just to give you a little example of that, you can sort of see, well, you can't. So here, I'm going to skip ahead to the Azure version of it. And again, just do the. Wow, everybody! This is not how this is supposed to go.
Don't sweat it too much. I think we're getting the gist, and and
thanks everybody for commenting. So
yeah, we have a great crowd watching. Sorry. Go ahead.
And I want to point out that anybody who's ever presented for like workshops or conferences or anything like that. There's always everybody has the horror story of when it all blew up and nothing worked right and you're in front of an audience. So
and the worst part is like, it's my baby for the last 2 years and I'm so proud of it. And anyway, well, we will do that. I'm going to put up a video on my repo that's going to show all this. I really will. So this is an example of how you might deploy Grace on Azure. where you run it in AKS, in Azure Kubernetes Service. And for state management, you plug in Cosmos DB for document storage, which is actually what I use for actors. So all the information about branches, repositories, owners, organizations, all that stuff is actually documents in a database, and the blobs themselves are in Azure Storage. So each version of the file just gets uploaded to Azure Storage. So I have that massive scalability. Service Bus and Event Hubs for PubSub. You can imagine plugging in Azure Monitor in the cloud. So this is like one way you could deploy it to the cloud. Imagine the AWS equivalence of this. Dapper itself right now, as of today, I think the number is 111 different services across all the clouds and stuff you can run on premises in containers. So Dapper's ready to go. So that's kind of an example of how I would deploy it. Grace is event sourced. And so again, I'm just going to stop because I think you all know what event sourcing is. Event sourcing turns out to be a really nice model, because what is a source control system? Like, it's one way to look at a source control system is it's a series of events that happen to code over time. So I'm just recording all those events in a line, and you can replay them over time. And command query responsibility segregation, CQRS, is a really great model for this, where you really segment out, here's the things that change state, and here's the things that just ask a question. And it makes it very easy to model your code that way. What else do I want to sort of say about this as I move forward to the slides you can't see? Obviously, I'm using actors for this. I would love to talk about that. Projections is a really interesting one. This is something I do want to kind of pop up one more time. And this idea that you can, you store the events, but you can do amazing, interesting things with the projections. So there we go. So you can imagine from the server's point of view, there's updates streaming in where there's saves and checkpoints and commits and promotions and like all the other commands, like change the status of a repo or whatever. And as soon as they hit the server, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trade some CPU and disk for performance to make your experience better. So I might do things like test merges or create temp branches or automatically generate diffs so that you can see them instantly. And what happens is over time, I garbage collect them. And so I'm saying here like +7 days. What the right number is, we'll figure out. But like after some number of days, when like 99% of the time, no one's going to ever look at that projection again, I just get rid of it. Now, if you ever need to see it again, if you ever need that diff again, well, I automatically generate it and it only takes a second. But to speed up your experience constantly, like I want to pre-compute as much as I possibly can. And also to speed up the DevOps stuff. Like maybe I just create one zip file instead of having to download a bunch of blobs. I can just create a zip file for you to download. And then what's left at the end of all that is just commits and promotions and all the other commands and like checkpoints for a while. And like that's the main architecture I want to sort of deal with. I have this view of the projects. I'm going to move on from that. Code. Let me talk about code a little bit. And I'm just going to kind of build this slide and then share it.
And I was thinking here while you bring it up, like the number of local branches that I keep on my machine, like with Git, and it's like I never delete them. So it's like, so is that something that Grace takes care of it?
Not yet. But you can have an unlimited number of branches for sure, because they're all just backed by massive cloud storage. Yeah. It's an interesting question. I could certainly imagine doing a view where I list the branches and their last update time, and give you the opportunity to delete them. So here's a little view that I want to talk about code and why fsharp. There's this. You can look at programming languages as sitting on a spectrum, from like imperative and hardware, like imperatives to declarative. Like there's the languages where you go, here's what the hardware is capable of, and I want to write exactly what the hardware is capable of, because I want to control the hardware and tell it exactly what to do. And all the way on the other side, there's the mathematical end. There's the category theoretic end of it, the functional end, where like I just want to write mathematical statements to some extent, and I don't care what hardware it runs on. Somebody else will figure that out. What's really interesting is that you can actually translate in either direction on this spectrum, and we already do that. C# we're used to we know that C# Roslyn compiles to intermediate language, and then the jitter Ryujit in .NET compiles to assembly. So we already do this. Like we do this translation. And all I want to say about F#, I want to say a couple of things. First of all, yes, F# is on the functional side. But you may disagree about where I'm placing some of these languages. And obviously there's so many other languages I could have used as examples and where they sort of sit on this continuum. But F# is not that big of a move away from C#. Number one, it compiles to intermediate language, so it's just as fast in almost every case as C#. There's little differences where F#'s faster at something and C#'s faster at something, but for the most part, you get that unbelievable speed of .NET. And all I want to say is I finally, after my whole career, I started writing assembly language when I was 11 years old. So I've been on the left-hand side of this chart for my whole life. And that was a long time ago. And around 2016, I started to get curious about the mathematical side, and I had the opportunity to work on an F# project at Microsoft Research for about a year, and it got me into thinking about this side of things, and I think it's an exciting way to explore. I think we already know what object-oriented code is capable of in our industry, and I think we've hit a quality ceiling on it, and I think it's good to look at how thinking functionally can give us better code. And ultimately, that's what I wanted to do with Grace. What I can say about Grace is, what I can say about using F# for Grace is all the, everything succinct, robust performance, sure, .NET's very fast. I can use all the functional things. There's an amazing community in .NET. But what I really want to say is using functional code for .NET, using functional code for Grace allowed me to write better, safer, and honestly more beautiful code. And when it's more beautiful, it's more maintainable. And that sense of kindness is what I'm trying to I don't want just kindness for the users. I want kindness for me. I want kindness for everyone who's going to develop Grace with me. And so I want, from the point of view that yes, we're doing craft, but we're also doing art. This is to some extent an art project in terms of being creative. I want to make something beautiful, and that goes to the code, not just the user experience. So F# really let me do that in a way. And believe me, I know C#. I've been doing .NET since 2001. I'm good at it. I just wanted to sort of explore something that's a little different. So we are getting really late, and after all this time and my screen not working, of course, it's hard to do a demo. What I do want to do, I want to leave you with one last thing. I will put up a video of.
Well, and while you're getting that URL, I just want to say that I think. I think you've made a case for folks to take a look at Grace and keep an eye on it, because you've certainly put a lot of thought into, where I think the pain points are with Git, and what the next generation of VCS should be considering, just regardless of whether it's Grace or the next one that comes along.
Thank you. And I just want to say, please star the repo, please, get me in Twitter, talk to me, put his question in discussions on the repo or an issue. I want your feedback. And again, sorry about the video, this one, I'm dying to share this with you. I want feedback. I want to know, if you think I'm headed in the right direction. If you see this on YouTube and you want to comment, I will look at the comments. I will respond. I want to know what you think. This is my sort of one tip for C# developers that I want you to think about.
And we can always have a follow-up show as well, and get the code and
after I get a better computer or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
we'll figure out that.
Right. Actually, I'm gonna do. Write words, word one, and I'm typing a little bit of fsharp, and I want to just show you a little something here that I think is kind of interesting. And I'm just going to plug this in, word one, word two. So this is Sharp Lab, which is awesome. Oops, word two. There we go. So, oh, and of course, like my screen's not updated. I've been typing all this stuff, and I'm gonna do it one more time. One more time. This is the last time.
It's fine, Scott. CPU throttling is the bane of live streaming.
I have CPU. It's the worst part. Anyway, okay. So I want to show you one little thing here. And let me crank up the font a little bit. This is some fsharp, and when you look at fsharp, it looks weird because you're like, wait, there's this module thing, and there's this just a function sitting there, just kind of hanging off of it, and like, what's it hanging off of? In C#, we're used to having like we define a class and a function off and a method off of it, and so like this kind of breaks your brain. But the thing about fsharp is it compiles to IL, and the .NET runtime is fundamentally object oriented. So if you look at what it actually compiles to from a C# point of view, now it compiles to IL, but in C# what it compiles to is a static class with a static method, and a static class with a static method leaves you with, you can't hide state in it the way that you can in a regular class. And so what I encourage you to do if you're a C# developer, and like you can start doing this today, is think about how can you structure your code in a way that you're using static classes that have static methods hanging off of it. And believe me, like that will get you to write better code that's more testable and get you to write pure functions or very close to pure functions. If you start doing this today, you will not believe how quickly your quality improves. And like learning this trick is what, like, I understand how to make quality code because of this. So that's kind of what I want to say. I'm going to stop there. Like I said, I'm going to get a video up on my repo. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I'm so grateful you got here. Sorry for the video again. I'm super excited about this. I'm super excited about fsharp. Like, please explore fsharp. And like, you owe it to yourself as developers, I would say, like, explore the mathematical side of what we do for a living. There's so much beauty there, and there's so much quality and so much just ease for us. We can make our lives better by working there. That's all I want to say. So thank you so much.
Totally agree.
Yeah, there were a lot of really good comments of folks who, it's unfortunate, but again, it happens that all the slides weren't updating right as you were talking. But yeah, there's a lot of believers now. There's a few folks here who, at first were a bit skeptical, and as you started going through it, really became interested in sort of what you were sharing here.
Luis, I just want to add on to that. Again, Scott, I definitely, folks don't hold the demo demo snafu against Scott. This sounds really interesting, and when we're done here today, I'm going to run out to his his repo that he put up, the URL, which I think do we still have that? I'm going to run out and pull it down and kick the tires and see what it's all about, because I think this is a really great idea, and I certainly hope it goes somewhere, Scott.
Thank you. I hope so too. It's an alpha. It barely works. Like, I'm doing the work to make it more inviting for everyone right now. But like, I believe in the direction, and I think, we can make more beautiful things for ourselves. Like, we deserve it. We need to stop making bad Electron interfaces and like do beautiful things for ourselves as developers. We deserve it. So.
And you mentioned it is like cloud native, so I think it's also a great sample for people that are trying to learn F# and cloud native to have something that is, and Dapper to have it and have something that is working.
Thank you all so much for having me. I'm so excited. I'm a big fan, like everyone there watching video. Like, I watch a ton of tech video. I've been a fan of on.NET Live for a long time. Like, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for saying that. It's a passion project for all of us. Way back in the day, our boss didn't really want us doing it, and we just did it anyway. And this is where we are. So, it really is, I think, rewarding to hear that. So.
Great.
Cool. Awesome.
We're
Well,
time.
yeah, let me just kind of close out the show here. And again, thank you, Scott, for coming on and presenting this. And we look forward to, if you ever want to come back on, the invite is always open for you to be here and
Thank you.
share Grace or any other project that you're working on, right, for that matter.
You got it. Thank you.
Yeah, so again, thank you folks for watching. Make sure to check out this. There's going to be a recording of this, of course, as well as our other shows. So make sure to check those out. And then next week, we'll be talking about a thing that I like, which is ML. Well, not to say that I don't like fsharp and Grace. This other thing that I like, which is machine learning, right? So Mara Benici is going to be joining us to talk about how to collect data in Azure, train it with Azure ML, exporting to Onyx, and running it with Onyx runtime. So if that's of interest to you folks, make sure to tune in next Monday, and we'll see you then. Thanks again, everyone. Take care. Bye.
See you.
Wow.